Hello, everyone. Just to let you know, we're going to give everybody a couple minutes to join, and then we'll get started at 2 o'clock. And thank you so much in advance for joining us today so far. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Meridian and BizLibrary State and Local Government Lunch and Learn today about simplifying your compliance and workforce enablement. We are very lucky today to be joined by Kayla Fitzgerald from BizLibrary and Nancy Dietz from Meridian Solid Knowledge Solutions, both here to share their excellent backgrounds and knowledge with you guys on this topic. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them. We will answer as we go, and we do also have a question and answer section at the end. Now I'm going to turn it over to Nancy to get us started today.
Thank you, Nicole. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about tools that are available for us to improve your processes for simplifying the compliance and workforce enablement. And these are the 5 areas that we will focus on today. The first one is going to be, what are those hidden costs of manual tracking? And then we're going to move on about how do we get our system automation ready? Because we can automate, but if our data that's set up isn't properly done, then the automation is no longer an effective means for us. Another one is we want to look at how do we make our system audit ready? How do we go about making sure that it becomes the central repository and it will be able to provide us the evidence that's needed when it's asked for? And we'll look at the idea of how do we automate assignments, reminders, and any visibility for people who need to look at that data. Then we're going to take a look at how do we go about making sure that the content that's within one of the tools is current. And then we'll also end up, as Nicole said, with a section for Q&A if we don't answer them as this progresses. So we're going to get started. Let's talk about the hidden costs of manual compliance tracking. So let's talk about this. We need to know who is required to complete each of those content courses. So where do we go about getting that information? We get these from departments, we get an export from HR, or sometimes we are even handed a compliance spreadsheet with all the names and of the different content items, which one each one's required to take. And on top of that, we have to look at our content itself. Laws change annually, and we must ensure that we're in alignment with that. And this requires us to control the version of the content to assure that it meets those legal requirements, whether they are at the local, state, or federal level. And there are different options available to us to be able to control that type of versioning. There is a version functionality, usually within existing courses, or each year you just create a brand new course that you alter the title. For example, Compliance 2026, and then the next year you create another one that you just call Compliance 2027. Each one of them is a different, distinct course, as opposed to it just being Compliance version 1, version 2. And after all of those assignments have been made, you now need to track the progress of everyone. In some organizations, you may be required to present that information visually. So now you have to create for yourself some type of a chart. And everyone knows everyone loves a pie chart. And so you'll need to have feedback to ensure that everyone was assigned and we didn't miss anyone. And think about that spreadsheet as you're taking all those names and putting them in and making the assignments. How easy is it to miss someone somewhere off of one of those spreadsheets? And then as the assignments are ongoing, those have not either started it or have not completed it, now we need to start the reminder process. And hopefully the idea is that if we've reminded them, the next time that we pull the data, they have actually completed it, and so they'll drop off and that list is starting to get smaller. Unfortunately, there is often times where there is a need for us to include the managers as we begin that escalation process. And then either during or sometime after that training period, another request usually arrives, and that's for you to provide proof that you followed what the law required. When tracking manually, these audits can often feel like they're a fire drill, especially if the request is specific. For example, I only want information for agency ABC, and agency JKL. And your spreadsheets then have to be reviewed for completeness, and then you have to filter them to only provide the requested data, which you hopefully have captured in those. These manual interventions take time, and time is money. These type of manual activities can lag behind real-time data. And we've all encountered the shrinking size of our departments. We may have 2 people, we may be lucky to have 8 or 10 in that learning and development or training department. And for us to support our organizations, we need to use every automated efficiency that is available to us. So 2 of those tools are off-the-shelf content, which frees up those resources to work on organization-specific content. And BizLibrary will talk about what is available when using their thousands of courses in their library. And I'm going to focus on using another tool, the Learning Management System, also known as the LMS. There are many functions with the LMS that can diminish or eliminate that manual intervention. Email, links to other areas such as procedures or templates, assigning training as either a one-time event or for the system to reassign it every few years, depending on your requirements, such as every year or every 2 years. Another is to group our users for access permissioning. Using off-the-shelf content, it assures the content is in alignment with those legal changes and the industry trends. And then any updates that are needed to the content to make sure they match. And think about using the LMS now to document your training. Either it's within it or from external sources, you're better prepared to answer those calls for an audit from whoever, such as an accrediting or a survey body, about the preparation of each of your employees. And consistent records can also become documentation if there are any legal actions. The intent is to make your LMS the central repository of information. Instead of the idea of Googling it, we want them to LMS it. So let's talk about preparing for that automation. Simple framework that goes with that. First, we need to organize everything, then we can automate, and then we're able to pull that reporting out and prove everything. So there are these 3 steps as we create and arrange the information. First, we need to organize information such as the users, and then we're going to take those users and we're going to organize them based on our target audiences in some type of a user grouping. And then we need to organize that content. The next piece in this framework is we set up the system automation. We're going to go in, and the intent is to remove as many of the manual interventions as possible so that the recurring content and the reminders of approaching deadlines, we want to be able to take those out. And then the last step is going to be able to extract that data out quickly and efficiently. And not only that, but it's in a format that we can use to provide evidence of our compliance. The data needs to be real time, no waiting for spreadsheets to be synchronized in order to provide them any type of completion records. So let's look at the idea of organizing our users initially. So our users are entered into the LMS, and then we start thinking about how do we assign content? How do we report on the content? So those are the two key areas we're looking at. So we want to group our users based on either how we're going to push that type of assignment out, which might be departments or divisions, roles, job functions. It could be based off of someone's hire date, anything like that. So that data comes in from the HR system to populate the LMS. And then we use that data to build those groups. Those groups become our target audience. And these are just some others I've explained, some examples of those user groupings. The grouping within the LMS sets the foundations for us to use that functionality to push or assign the training without the need to keep referring to that spreadsheet, to know who has already been assigned and who still needs it. So think of those spreadsheets as we enter each person in, we change the color of the line to green to know that we completed them. And we keep moving through the spreadsheet until everyone's line has been turned green. And we can take a look at that, and by using the data fields to create these types of groupings, the system can dynamically add and remove users from them. So if we're using something as a new hire that comes in, they're only going to remain in the group if they've completed a certain set of courses. Upon completion, we drop them out of the new hire group. And we can use that same type of concept for being able to have access in. So we can use those types of groupings for that as well. We want someone to be able to have an intermediate level access, but we only want them to be there if they've completed the 101 type level course. By using these types of groupings, we can have that content segmented and accessible only by those that are qualified to access it. And that gateway assures any type of an auditor that only users with proper training can access that type of advanced content. So here's some examples of target audiences that once we've grouped them together, we can do what we might want to do with those. So we can target things like assigning the training out. We can set up those automated reminders. So to everybody within a group that happens to be a manager can get their reminders. And then we're able to take that user grouping and we're able to reuse it during your various assigning cycles, whether that's an annual, biannual, or it's role-based. Those groups become the basis for how we are able to push the content on a recurring basis. So the idea is that we want to build it once and then reuse it for every assignment cycle. And then we're also able to use it for every audit request. We want to also go in and start organizing our content. So once it's available in there, we want to be able to use those user groups we just created to add permissioning for who can view and access that content. It assures confidential or audience-specific content is only available to those who should know about it. And once all the content is available, we can also group the content now into catalogs to assist the employees to navigate and locate content more easily. We can go about taking content and we can organize it even further. So it's in a catalog, but once they're entered into the catalog, maybe there are 3 or 4 of those content items that it makes sense for them to be grouped together. And that's where we create those curated types of learning journeys, often referred to as curriculums. So we create that journey, and that journey could be based off of role, could be based off of an organization. Think about that type of onboarding or upskilling that you might want to be able to do. So the journey could be any of these types of examples. where it could be an onboarding. It could be during annual compliance period, where we group together that content in order for them to achieve a single enrollment. So we have a curriculum with all our compliance courses in it. We enroll them into that curriculum or guided learning journey, and that enables them to know everything they need. They get a single enrollment as opposed to 5, 10, or 15 enrollments. And it's all pulled together for them in an organized fashion. We can do the same thing with anything that's role or department specific. We create those kinds of journeys for them as well, which could either be for their professional development as they begin trying to elevate to the next level, or through the onboarding process, where we can define for new hires what they need to do in week 1, week 2, week 3, and into the future. The hope is that we can give them a single enrollment as opposed to getting bombarded with those additional level of enrollment options. Within the LMS, we want to be able to also create this as your central repository. So I want you to think about, we talked about the idea, we don't want them to Google it, we want them to LMS it. We know that there are a variety of places that there is data inside of our organizations. There are some as our intranet, there's some out on their our web pages. There are some in shared folders places. We may have a policy and procedure type of application that's out there. All of those kinds of things that are available, we want them to be able to not have to remember how to get to them. If they come to the LMS, what we can do is set up a catalog that we can call reference material. And then within it is a link that could drive them over to the policy and procedure area, or something that could drive them over to the area where they could have templates and forms, schedules, calendars, the directory even. So any of those intranet pages or internal resources that you might have. Maybe you make types of videos and you house them on an internal private Vimeo or a private type of YouTube channel. Again, we can make these so that they can direct them to those places. We want them to look in one place for everything they need, whether that is for their job specific, their compliance, or for any of those other resources that are needed to make sure that they are compliant with everything. When they are asked questions about, do you know where X is? They may say not necessarily the specific location, but they know they can come to the LMS and look, I click right here and it takes me to where I need to go. And so again, this is about providing tools to each of your employees to make sure that they are efficient. Then once we have the users into the system from either your HR system or however they're set up, self-registration even, then the next piece is we organize those users into the user groupings, creating those target audiences. Then we organize the content, and that content can be permissioned using the groups, can be placed in those catalogs, and those catalogs can either be based on, job roles, it could be based on something else. But now we have the foundation to begin the automation piece of this. And so if you are manually assigning content each year, and you have to ask yourself, is it the same content? Say like a safety training thing, fire extinguishers, or is it annual compliance for something like cybersecurity, which is constantly changing? And we know how quickly that world is obviously, changing the materials that we need to know and be aware of. So we can automate the process, allowing you to assign the content out to that target audience. And then next year or every 2 years, you can have the system go ahead and reassign the content. We're now hands off. So we don't have to remember to make sure that it's pushed again on, May 1 to push out to them. The system goes ahead and does that for you. So the idea when we set up those automation is we choose that content that needs to go out. It could be a single course. It could be that curriculum that we've created where we've grouped them together. We choose that target audience. Again, it could be a single user, a single department, or it could be a targeted group. We set that schedule up. That schedule could have to be done on an annual basis or every 2 years. And we set the deadline for them. We need to have you complete this in 90 days, 6 months, or we give them a full year, 2 years in which to complete. Then the next piece is about reminding them. So 60 days before the deadline, we begin that reminder process. And that schedule can be adjusted according to your organizations. And being able to send multiples. Can we go ahead and send, more than one because we know that's what's going to take? And maybe by the last one is where we start involving the manager in there. So they have a level of visibility as to who on their staff is complete and who is not complete. Because ultimately it falls on their responsibility to make sure the people within their environment and their staff are fully compliant. But they can't do that without data. And so by automating that, instead of you as an administrator going in and creating a report and then filtering it and sending it to all the varying managers, we turn around and we can just send out that listing for them. And there it is sitting in their inbox when they arrive. You schedule reports that can be sent to them. It can either be run immediately, but you can also send reports out that come to them via email. So on a Monday morning, when they arrive at the office at 7:30 a.m., then there's their report sitting there of their people. And that could come on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, once a year basis, any of those. And I always remind administrators is to use that functionality for themselves as well. They're expected to always provide an update on how the organization is doing. Use that same automation to make your own lives even easier. And the idea is we set it up this year. Now next year rolls around and the system already knows how to do all of that. It already has the content, the audience, the schedule. It knows what the deadlines and reminders are going to be. It already has the reports available, ready to run. And it just goes ahead and does that. You can take that yellow sticky right off of your laptop and no longer worry about it in your calendar about, okay, I need to get this done. The system does it. Your job focus can then become about making sure your content is ready and then beginning to review any types of exceptions. You should not be chasing after people to get completions. The idea of the automation is about opening time for you to focus your knowledge and skills on organization-specific responsibilities. And that's great. We've got everything out there. But the final piece of this is we need to be able to extract the data. You have to report on it. Data is great, but if I can't take it and prove it, then it's not going to help us much. So what you want to be able to do with those reporting is you want to be able to send out real-time reports, no updating spreadsheets. You want to be able to send them out on some type of a schedule. You want to be able to send out completion summaries. And by doing all of that, it allows you to keep your documentation consistent. So once you are going in there, your LMS can assign them, remind them, and report automatically. So then when your audit requests arrive, you're not building or updating a spreadsheet. You're just going in and pulling the proof for them right then and there. And when we talk about, the content in there, the next level that you need to think about is the content itself. So you're not creating what already exists. I'm going to hand it over to Kayla from BizLibrary, who's going to talk about the thousands of courses they have available to keep you out of that role for very standard types of topics in there. Kayla, over to you.
Thank you, Nancy. Really appreciate it. I'm Kayla Fitzgerald, Senior Content Manager at BizLibrary. I'm going to talk us through the content strategy piece now and how BizLibrary provides up-to-date, relevant compliance content as a content provider for the Meridian platform. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, I think, Nancy. And we can talk through, thank you, the reality that many of us know all too well, checkbox compliance. Compliance is often seen as something we have to get through, learners just clicking next, next, next until they reach the certificate. And the results are predictable: boredom, low retention, little behavior change, and sometimes even resentment. Some of the biggest challenges organizations face include content that feels irrelevant to their learners tuning out, struggling to keep up with legal updates, lack of leadership buy-in, and difficulty measuring whether training is actually changing behavior. What can compliance look like in the workplace? It spans a wide range of topics, including anti-harassment, workplace violence, safety, risk management, all of which are vital to building a safe and respectful workplace. What is a safe workplace? It's one where employees feel physically secure and emotionally supported. When your culture allows unsafe conditions or harassment to go unchecked, the resulting productivity losses can be just as damaging as lawsuits. In a safe workplace environment, though, employees look out for one another, they clean up spills, report misconduct, and speak up when something isn't right, even if they're not directly affected. Too often, bystanders don't act in cases of harassment or other violations due to fear of retaliation. But when your company lacks a foundation of integrity, it becomes too easy to ignore these problems and just hope someone else will fix them. Compliance thrives when people are empowered to act in the best interest of their peers and the organization. Let's talk about why up-to-date compliance content really matters. We want to ensure that your agencies remain aligned with frequently changing federal, state, and local regulations, reducing that audit risk and any costly penalties. Support workforce readiness by providing timely training on emerging topics like cybersecurity, data privacy, and digital accessibility, which are increasingly targeted by new mandates and threats. Promote public trust and transparency by demonstrating a proactive commitment to ethical standards and legal compliance in service delivery. We want to minimize operational disruptions caused by outdated procedures, enabling you and your learners to adapt quickly to legislative changes and best practices. And lastly, we want to address workforce turnover and knowledge loss by ensuring new and existing employees receive the current and relevant compliance information. So BizLibrary, like Nancy has said, we do provide thousands of courses, but especially in some of these hot topic areas that you may need. Anti-harassment is kind of our bread and butter content. We'll talk a little more about that. Cybersecurity as well. We have a lot of respect at work content, workplace safety and OSHA content, as well as workplace violence. So as you might guess, we have to make compliance updates quite often. Our anti-harassment courses meet state requirements for California, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, New York, Texas, and Washington. And they undergo a biannual review with a law firm we work with, Ogletree Deakins. We have a version for federal contractor employees and supervisors specifically, as well as one targeting a manufacturing audience. We've also added a course for Ontario and a generic Canada course. It's a lot to keep up with, but we've optimized our production process to keep generic and state-specific updates distinct from one another. Our state-specific information is clearly delineated from the generic, which makes legal review more efficient and simplifies post-production, thus ensuring we can keep our content compliant as soon as you need it. We can jump to the next slide, Nancy. So on our team, we've had to think a lot about how to create compliance content that serves a large audience of learners. Oh yeah, one before that. When California's Senate Bill 553 came up, for example, we had a lot of clients asking what that meant for them and how we could help. This was a case where the heavy lifting is really on the employer side to create a workplace violence prevention plan and train employees on what the company and site-specific policies are. But we thought we might be able to help them get there a little bit as well. So we decided to create a job aid that would detail all of their requirements, plus a violent incident log and workplace violence prevention plan template. All these wordy requirements that California had. We added these materials onto our existing workplace violence courses, which already had all the generic information that they needed for the training piece. That way, a single course can work as a generic and state specific for anyone in California who needs that additional information. Similarly, we also created a job aid for the New York Retail Worker Safety Act and added that onto our generic retail violence course. And again, we included the sample incident log and a workplace violence prevention plan template so that learners have everything they need. And we didn't have to create an entirely new course. They also don't have to kind of delineate which learner needs which thing. Everyone can access what they need on that topic from one course. So here are some reasons you might benefit from using one-size-fits-all content. There's a need for regular updates, as we've talked about. Outdated policies and procedures would lead to non-compliance risks. There's a lack of specialized training for emerging topics such as cybersecurity, data privacy, and digital accessibility that you may want to fill with training that's already created for you. You may have gaps in onboarding materials for new hires, especially regarding ethical standards and public service mandates. You also may want to be supplementing your existing onboarding with more information about, say, like a code of conduct and what it means besides just what's actually written in your policy. You may need multilingual or different culturally relevant training resources for diverse workforces. So BizLibrary Productions, which is our in-house production team making our own content. Our content has 32 languages in closed captioning, and we're adding audio also in a few languages, so far Spanish and French, but it's something we are working on a lot this year. You also may be looking for consistency and refresher training schedules. That's a bit of what Nancy talked about, kind of trying to reduce those knowledge gaps and increase retention over time. And you also will want to tailor assignments to role. So we have different content aimed at managers compared to frontline employees. You may outline a different training curriculum for a developer than a support specialist. And you also will want to align compliance training with operational readiness, not just regulatory requirements. So an example is pairing cybersecurity awareness with real-world phishing simulations, or linking emergency preparedness courses with tabletop exercises to build muscle memory while satisfying those compliance mandates for your audits. And on the next slide here, wanted to talk about a little more of the strategy behind the content we create. So to reimagine compliance and support engagement for compliance training, we start with a few core principles. First is prime the learner. Help them understand why this matters before we ask them to click through the content. From an instructional design standpoint, Edward Thorndike's law of readiness states that individuals learn more efficiently when they're physically and mentally prepared. So in our courses, we try to, number one, motivate the learner with introductions that share the purpose, the learning objectives, and what to expect in this course. You can see an example of a poll here on the screen that gets learners thinking about the concept they're about to learn. Number two, start with simpler concepts and build toward more complex ones. Number three, prepare the learner with introductory interactions. And we use realistic modern scenarios that resonate with their daily work. And this all comes from kind of an instructional design strategy. We want to encourage active participation with questions, choices, and reflection instead of just passive viewing. According to experiential learning theory from David Kolb, reflective observation and active experimentation provide transformative learning experiences. So we incorporate realistic characters and situations into scenarios. We've seen great success with using real-life scenarios, and learners often ask for this. For example, following an employee through choices around reporting harassment, handling sensitive data, or navigating a conflict of interest. These experiences make consequences tangible and highlight not just what to do, but also why it matters. One of our anti-harassment series introduces these characters, some certain characters through each lesson, and shows some very practical situations that your own learners might find themselves in, like a coworker telling someone their natural hair is unprofessional, or what to do as a bystander witnessing a hostile customer interaction. We also like to offer opportunities for reflection. So we build these into the course design, like you can see here, for an integrated user experience. We also provide clear rationales for failed attempts. So these quizzes that you go through during the course will tell you if you got the answer right or wrong and why. Um, we suggest activities as well for continued learning after the course, such as web links to go out to and other resources, recommendations for discussion and reflection questions, or other lessons to watch from our library. When learners actively engage with the content, they're far more likely to remember it and apply it on the job. Think about your own experiences. We rarely remember a long policy PDF, but we do remember a scenario where someone had to decide between cutting corners and doing the right thing. So keep in mind, especially with compliance content, completion does not equal comprehension. Engagement improves outcomes, and content must be easy to assign, repeat, and refresh. The science is clear. Our brains are wired for story. When training uses narratives and relatable characters, learners form emotional connections. That connection translates into better recall and stronger behavior change. We have recently launched a new content feature called BizReady. BizReady is an AI-powered role-play feature within BizLibrary content that transforms learning from passive video watching into active skill practice. Learners engage in realistic, AI-driven workplace scenarios and receive detailed feedback, highlighting strengths and opportunities. Combined with BizLibrary's high-quality content, BizReady helps increase knowledge retention and drive improved business results. At the end of select BizLibrary lessons, a BizReady interaction presents learners with a scenario tied to the lesson's objectives. The AI persona will initiate the conversation, engage with the learner, and provide detailed feedback on strengths, opportunities, insights, and recommended improvements to support real-world application. Why did we create this? BizReady reflects BizLibrary's commitment to building a more competent and compassionate future. It enhances our content library by providing post-lesson practice that strengthens retention and bridges the gap between understanding concepts and safely applying them in real-life situations. And who can use BizReady? You can if you are a member or a client or customer of Meridian. It's just a function of our content. So BizReady role plays are included at no additional cost, and they're available to anyone using BizLibrary content. So you can access here. After a launch, BizReady is automatically available, no special implementation required. So currently we have this available on 185 of our most popular courses in the HR compliance area, leadership and management, business skills, and sales and service. These role plays support skill development in areas such as conducting difficult conversations, resolving customer issues, coaching direct reports, communicating with empathy, and managing compliance-sensitive interactions. When training is ongoing and interactive, it moves beyond an annual event. It becomes part of everyday behaviors, reinforcing that compliance is not just a box to check, it's how we work responsibly and ethically as a team. So again, try to keep training fresh and effective through regular updates, legal reviews, and a variety of content styles, ensuring ongoing relevance and compliance. And then kind of beyond the content itself, We encourage clients, organizations to facilitate discussions and have ongoing touch points, such as campfire chats or just Teams conversations, to reinforce training as a continuous practice, not just a one-time event. At BizLibrary, from my own experience, our HR team hosts these campfire chats through our while we're doing a learning initiative, and again when we've completed the training for that initiative. So this motivates us to complete the content. It connects us with our colleagues and helps us internalize the material through targeted discussion prompts. It's something you could consider trying with your teams too. And with that, I will turn the mic back over to Nancy.
All right. Thank you, Kayla. So we've now heard about the two different tools that you have available for you to be able to take away the manual process and begin involving more of an automated process. We talked about some of those ways to use the LMS with automated features, with the idea that the content that is ever changing with our training environment and the trends that are out there. We see, and Kayla explained how BizLibrary goes through and they make sure that that content is reviewed and is complete. I don't know about all of you, but I don't know how many of us have that time to invest in making sure that every law that we are supposed to be compliant with, that our material is up to date with that when we design it ourselves. So that's where the BizLibrary courses, we basically have outsourced that to them and allowed them to do that with those at that level of expertise. And then from the LMS, we take that content and we put it in there and we make sure that it's organized into those curriculums or catalogs for people. We take that content and now we can make those assignments out on an automated basis so that we get the right content to the right people at the right time. And then turn around on an annual or biannual, whatever it happens to be, with those reoccurring training cycles. We go out and make sure that happens. And then we turn around and we automate the idea of reminding them. We're no longer chasing them. We're not sending emails and asking managers to please check their staff and are they done yet or not done yet. So managers have a visibility of who in theirs. There are some organizations that even like to take that another level and turn on a type of leaderboard to be able to say Department X is now at 80% completion and someone else is only down at 40%, and it kicks in that gamification and that intrinsic motivation to get to the top. But the idea is that there's no manual types of follow-up. We're not checking that spreadsheet. And then when we get those audit requests, when they come through the door, we are not doing the fire drill. We're not running to our spreadsheet, making sure that it's updated, pulling, who has Nancy completed hers and has Caleb completed hers. We're not doing that. We're just going into the system and we're immediately pulling a report of real-time data as of that moment when the report prints, so that we're able to provide that proof that we are compliant at that time. And so just an example, when you got annual cybersecurity and harassment training, very typical ones that are going out, and we assign them in as one curriculum. We know that the content we're putting in the curriculum is coming from BizLibrary. We know it's the latest and greatest that's in there. We set the due date, and then we set their automated reminders, and then we just schedule a completion report to be sent out. And so we're hands off in that process because, again, time is money. And we want to be able to focus your skill sets on those other things, all without spreadsheets and all without having to use our calendar reminder messages that are in there. Kayla, anything last that you would like to add?
No, Nancy, I think you covered everything there.
Okay. Let's go in and take one last. So at this point, I just want to say on behalf of Kayla and I we want to be able to say thank you for attending today. And we're going to take a couple of moments here and see if anybody has any questions that we may be able to answer, or if we didn't answer them for you throughout.
If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat.
Give everybody a few minutes. So Shelley, it looks like you have your hand up if you want to just type your question into the chat. Okay, can reports be generated for different agencies? Yes, and that's that important piece of being able to take the data and extract it out either in totality for everyone, because sometimes they want to see the overall, or that request may come in and say, I only want a specific agency. And yes, the reporting within the Meridian system enables you to be able to filter down and only pull it out for that specific target audience. So that circles us back to how do we create those user groups to be able to pull in those target audiences. Again, that saves you time. Time is money because we don't want to be thinking who belongs in that one to pull them into the report. We pull it for the target audience. Great question. Because we all know that when we get an audit request, they're usually not patient. So we need to get that information quickly.
All right, doesn't look like we have any other questions in the chat. So we will close out the webinar for today. Thank you again to Nancy and Kayla for both being presenters today. We will be sending out the replay of this webinar for everybody tomorrow. And feel free to reach out to our teams if you have any additional questions or want to learn more about BizLibrary or Meridian. And we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys.